Today on the LA Business Podcast, our guest is Kate Duchene. Kate runs the consulting firm RGP, helping large companies with their transformational approaches to risk management, compliance, finance, accounting, data, digital, and tech. We have a great conversation about how she views digital transformation, the acceleration of workplace changes, whether companies should be demanding people come back to work. I vote no. I mean, come back to work, but just work from home. And the opportunity to fail within large organizations, and even why failing is good for everyone involved, the employees, the organization, and internal learnings. Let's jump right into this week's episode with Kate Duchene. The LA Business Podcast, your destination to hear stories of how businesses grow and scale. I'm Robert Brill, CEO of Brill Media and the host of this podcast. Now, let's jump right into this week's interview. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the LA Business Podcast. Today our guest is Kate Duchene, CEO of RGP, a global human capital firm helping clients match the right professional talent needed to tackle change and transformational initiatives. Kate, thank you so much for being on the show today. Can you tell us more about the trends you are seeing in your business post-COVID? We want to talk about what you're seeing and how you've been helping other businesses attract talent in this environment. Thanks for being with us today.
Sure. Thanks, Robert, and thanks for having me. And I'm happy to share what we're learning and how we're serving our client base. So really, I look at the question you pose in two different perspectives. One is, what are clients doing post-COVID? And then what does talent want? So I'll address those in turn. From a client perspective, clients are looking for agility right now, resilience, efficiency, and speed. Everyone has more transformation on their agenda than they did before COVID. And COVID, in many respects, has been an accelerator of a number of transformation initiatives. Think about, digitizing data. Think about building collaboration tools when you still have remote workers or hybrid workers, and working more borderlessly with talent. On the other hand, talent is looking for radical flexibility. We've seen
I love that phrase.
Yeah, I know. It's so true. You can't overuse the word radical here. It's been a real inflection point, and I think a pendulum shift for talent to reflect on what is it that they really want out of work today. And that's not just where they perform work, it's when they perform work and the kind of work that they're doing, and becoming more agile in their perspective to work. So we see change happening, on both fronts, if you will, in supply and demand.
So by some accounts, top minds in this field are saying that these types of changes are happening, accelerating a decades-long trend into a year and a half. Do you agree with that?
I definitely agree with that. So our company was built on the premise that professionals will want to work in a more agile way. Meaning, baby boomers signed up with a company for life oftentimes, right? And it was all about climbing the corporate ladder in one institution. That mindset has entirely shifted. And I think COVID has really accelerated the change in mindset, where really good talent is now looking for more agility. They're looking to build careers based upon portfolios, not necessarily with the same organization. And so it's opening up a lot more creative solutions to workforce strategies.
Absolutely. And it creates a slew of challenges. One of the things that I learned along the way when I started my business is that if I was like, I'm genius. I'm going to hire people from all around the country. I'm not going to have an office. I'm not going to deal with Los Angeles traffic. But you know what I also learned when I signed up with Paychex and then ADP, et cetera, we have to have tax organizations in every state that we hire in. Boy, that's exciting. Now I have to have people managing the tax organizations. That's not what I signed up for when I started an advertising business. Are you seeing the types of companies that you work with? Are you seeing these changes? Like, how are people handling the secondary and tertiary effects of these changes, and what are some of these secondary and tertiary effects of this new world that we're living in?
Well, I think it's understanding that work's going to get performed not just by full-time equivalents, but by partners, by gig workers, by other providers. And so needing to restructure your people organization or talent organization to build services, not just for employees, but for partners and vendors, et cetera. I think that companies are starting to realize with the acceleration of change initiatives that the kind of skill sets you need for various transformation initiatives are changing so rapidly. And frankly, the shelf life for skills is changing more rapidly than ever. And so keeping a part of your talent strategy purely agile and finding the right partner who can help you onboard the skills and fill the gaps quickly is a new way of working today.
It's really interesting. One of the key things in our organization that has to this exact point that I didn't even realize was a thing until I heard you kind of like talk about it, is that like it is such an advantage that we have the ability to pay contractors all around the world every 2 weeks. Like if I
Right.
didn't have a great bookkeeper who was able to manage that, there's no way I could even onboard talent to do that. And this is outside of Upwork and those other platforms. It's just I can get a better relationship and get better talent when I can pay someone quicker than every month, right? And it allows me to onboard interesting new people for stuff that isn't part of the core offering that we do. What do you say to an organizational leader, a CEO, a business owner who wants to bring people back into the office at the end of this year or the middle of this year, when their employees might be not so interested in coming back to the office? Who wins that? Who wins that round?
I'd put my money on talent.
Yeah,
I think talent, as I said before, I think the pendulum has shifted. And in business, it goes back and forth. Who has the leverage? To me, moving forward, it's going to be talent, and the best talent will have the leverage to say, we don't want to work every day. I mean, nobody misses the commute, right? Everybody loves a couple days a week where you can wear shorts or a sweatshirt to your desk, right? That you can wear flip-flops and not high heels if you're a woman. I mean, we don't miss those sort of things, but we do miss relationship building and we do miss human connection. So I think the most competitive companies moving forward will have a hybrid return to office approach and will allow certain flexibility, and a greater focus on deliverables, not FaceTime, and really trusting your employees to deliver when you can't stare at them.
does this change? Do you foresee this change weeding out um, individuals who might not be aligned with that, with the basically the bosses, the old school folks who are like, I don't care who says what, people are coming back to office. Do you see this change is coming back, this new world that we're in, weeding out those people and to the point where they just can't? I guess what I'm saying is I'm concerned that there's going to be people who are setting up a battle line that are not going to let those people have the flexibility.
I
Do you
mean,
see
I
those
think,
people leaving
yeah,
the workforce?
I think time will tell on whether a rigid approach will
Right.
succeed. I'll just
Right.
say that. What I'm hearing and what we're hearing, not only from our consultant base, but from many client contacts, is that a rigid approach is not going to work going forward for the best talent. I
Yeah.
mean, COVID has taught us a lot about what we care about ensuring that we all have purpose in our lives, ensuring that, we fit work into life and not the other way around. I'm a baby boomer, so I was first raised professionally to say, how do you fit life into work?
Sure.
It's a completely different paradigm today. And so I think in order to really be able to attract the best talent, we're going to have to encourage and empathize with the need for flexibility. I mean, especially I'll highlight one particular talent group is women. All of the data tells us that women have fallen out of the workforce at really an alarming rate as a result of COVID impact. And we can understand why. They primarily take a greater responsibility with familial duties and child rearing, et cetera. And so the pressures have gotten too great. And if we want to attract that incredibly talented group of workers back into our organizations, we're going to have to do it with creativity and flexibility, or we're going to lose out. And, our organization, just to give you a little bit of history, was first founded, 25 years ago on the premise that really talented people were falling out of the Big Four, and mostly they were women, and they needed a home, a professional home where they could do high quality, high level work, but in a more flexible way.
Yeah, I mean, I can't cite any given study, but I've heard plenty of them that show that the more diverse a group of people you have within your organization, the more likely you are to come up with better ideas and not be myopic and make poor decisions that someone clearly could have told you is a bad idea if they had just a different point of view.
Right.
How has RGP handled the last year and a half? Tell me about the ups and downs of the last year and a half. COVID, I remember distinctly March 13th, which was a Friday, was the day that South by Southwest canceled, which I was greatly looking forward to. I'm sure you guys were as well. What do you do in that moment? How did you adapt, and how does 21 and 22 look for you guys?
So you're right. I mean, it's hard to remember where we were a year ago because it feels like so much has evolved during that time. March hit. I was just coming home from visiting our New York City office when, the country was starting to lock down. And at the first impact, say the first 60 days, I think people were really in a state of ambiguity, tremendous uncertainty about what was happening. And so there seemed to be a bit of a paralysis. I think at our company, we had just gone through a technology upgrade and a move toward more virtual offices purposefully, not because we thought a pandemic was coming, but we thought perhaps a recession was coming. And so we were trying to get ourselves more agile and resilient. Thank goodness we did, because then we really didn't miss a beat to put our new technology pathways into play and practice. And we, migrated, like many companies, straight to Teams and Zoom and other technology tools in order to do our business. What we did see then is kind of a state of status quo with our clients. So we're engaged on a number of projects that were extended. We were already there delivering. But what we saw is that new projects were put on hold for a period of time until our clients felt they could get greater visibility on what was to come. So, we had a relatively, I think, very successful year given the circumstances.
Yeah.
Coming out of, the pandemic and seeing more recovery, there's tremendous opportunity to help companies continue to evolve. And I think many organizations have realized they can do more with technology. They want to accelerate their digital agendas. And so that's an opportunity to deliver more service to our clients as they really think about technology and digital change, but also workforce strategy changes, which is a lot about treating your human capital like you would other important supply chain elements, where you build in some fixed relationships and you build in some agile relationships, and you really understand how to be more creative and what the white space going forward looks like. And so those are the kind of really cool conversations that we're having with clients today on how to move forward. And again, you could call COVID the great accelerator, or the CIO or the CHRO of the future, because it has required us both to, I think, reset, but also then look at the white space and get even more creative.
Can you expand on that? The relationship between fixed and agile relationships with human capital. I mean, I have an idea of what that might mean. I'm sure you have can give us a lot more ideas into how that
Yeah.
looks.
So I'll give you an example of a conversation I had with a client. I won't name names, but I had a conversation with the CFO of a public company, and he said when COVID first hit, and they're a manufacturing company, they really almost went into lockdown. They had to send people home. They really needed to assess, did they have to do layoffs? And they did do some layoffs, but they also really took the time to assess, do we need all these full-time roles? I mean, what are we missing? And, sometimes when you have such an inflection point, in this regard, it was for a really negative reason, but there's learning that can happen in these kind of inflection points. And what they realized is roles that maybe were full-time 10 years ago weren't full-time anymore. And so it gave them the opportunity to be courageous and say, how are we going to fill this skill in the future? And it may be that our full-time equivalent headcount reduces, and then we start insourcing or using contractors. There's lots of different solutions now in the talent landscape, but it gave them the courage to try some new things.
Wow.
And, this goes back to the days of Peter Drucker, who we all know was, one of the early management gurus, consultant gurus. And he always said the most successful companies will keep their core team small and will insource in-demand skill sets. And that's what we're really seeing, because the bottom line is when you have transformation initiatives, the skill sets you need change. They are dramatically different. And so what you need for, say, a 6 to 12 month project should change for the next 6 to 12 months as you move on to your next agenda item. And that's really what we're seeing today. Now, that happens to be the business we're in. So this is good news for us. But I think it's good news for talent and employees alike. I mean, our purpose at RGP is that human agility ignites opportunity and impact. And that purpose really fires me up, because it means we help clients achieve their goals more quickly and with greater impact. And we help talent achieve their goals by really getting cool opportunities with beloved brands, and they build their career experience through a portfolio approach.
Wow. That's fascinating. Let's switch to digital. When I think of digital, I think of a medium to reach people: Facebook, Instagram, Yahoo, AOL, your favorite blog, connected TV on Roku, and digital billboards, etc. I know digital is much more than that. Tell us about when you talk about digital for companies making big transformational changes, what are you talking about there?
Yeah, a lot of what we do, Robert, is helping companies digitize what happens out of the back office often. So, what we're all used to now, given the advent of our smartphones, right? I have mine here, is that we want a consumer-like experience in every aspect of our life. So just think about that as the first premise. And then what does it mean to come to work and not have the same kind of easy apps or collaboration tools that we're so used to in life? So what we're seeing now is that many companies are saying, okay, it's time to create that. It's time to elevate the employer, the worker experience, so that we get better engagement, we get greater efficiency, and we get speed. And, every company is looking for speed right now, given that disruptors are popping up, large and small every day. So it's things like, how do you collaborate on workflows? It used to be, for example, I'll give you another example. It used to be that, the IT service desk had a software tool to track workflow. Okay. Well, now every function in an organization has something like that. And by the way, it's more app-like than ever before, so that, it's not just the airport that has the smiley face reaction, that you can push. It's actually in workflows that happen in the employee environment that'll have those smiley faces. Was your service good? Are you happy? Building more of that kind of experience in the back office, we see a big trend right now.
So a lot of it is looking, or some of it at least, is looking at the internal constituent as the end user and saying, okay, this person is the customer. They're an employee. They're a contractor. They're a freelancer. How do I make their experience much more pleasurable and functional?
Right. The other is, you think about every function has core process,
Hmm.
right? And oftentimes those core processes have not been reviewed in years. People get trained to do the same thing. How do we accomplish our accounts payable process? That's just an example. It may have 20 steps. And today, with the use of digital, you may be able to automate 16 of those steps. And then the humans really spend their time analyzing information that could change the way you do it in the future, or could identify proactively areas of risk.
Right.
And they aren't just functional processors anymore. They're really thinking more critically, and therefore then adding more value to the organization.
I like, I don't know who said this, but I like the phrase that, I think it was actually Michio Kaku. He's a theoretical physicist, and he says the future of jobs is going to be humans tending to the robots.
Yep.
And it's such a better use of our time to actually look at the edge cases, do the analysis, than to be the people who are just, as you said, doing the day-to-day pass through work, as it were. It's very
Right.
similar to advertising, a big trend that happened in advertising. I love that. It's so interesting. There, when you look at consumers and jobs, there are these reports coming out that people aren't taking jobs, maybe uh, because it's better to stay home and collect unemployment or some other things. Do you see a trend in that, or does it affect that you or any of your clients and how you guys manage jobs, manage pay, manage how you forecast for the future?
So I do think it will impact certain job categories and certain of our clients. We tend to operate in the professional space, so I haven't seen that impact on our business directly. But the answer to that, I think, is not just money, because
Yep.
people are looking for more than money in their employer-employee relationships right now. They're looking for purpose. They're looking for their employer to be a force for good in their community, meaning we care how we are not only treating our employee, but how do we treat the rest of their family, especially in COVID when work has invaded, home life. And so it's not just about money anymore. And I think in order to win that battle, you have to be able to prove we are providing more than money and satisfying, your human needs, if you will. I hate to get so existential in certain respects, but it is true. I mean, it's what we need to do.
Absolutely. Looking into the next year, what are the 2 to 3 key questions your clients are asking you for advice on?
I think how do we run our talent strategies more creatively?
Okay.
How do we make sure that we have access to the highest level talent rapidly? And I also think, how do we address upskilling or reskilling? Because as I mentioned before, and there's lots of research out there that, the shelf life of technical skills today is about 5 years.
Okay.
Okay. You just need to look at how kids today take their SAT exams. They can bring high powered calculators. Okay. I never brought a high powered calculator to my SAT exam. So the world is changing and we have to be ready for it. So then how do we, another question is, how do we prepare our workers to provide the most value in the future? And so looking at the competencies that are not just built on substantive skill sets, but are built more on what I'll call the human competencies of empathy, curiosity, learning, mindset, creativity, etc. I just read a study yesterday that said emotional intelligence is identified as one of the absolute critical skills for the future. And we see that, and we see now colleges and universities are creating mindset curriculums that have more to do about how you work through challenge and problems, especially as group members, than how do you calculate, X and Y.
Yeah, it sounds like such a granola thing. I'm here in LA, and I get razzed for it. It's the vibe, it's a lifestyle, but it's such an important thing. Our last, not our last hire, but we hired a chief operating officer, and I 100% hired this person because of his level of empathy that could balance what I lacked. And I learned so much from him. And it's interesting because some of the trends that you're talking about that are relevant for some of the largest firms in the world, like in a very small way, we have the ability and flexibility to deploy that on these trends that I think a lot of small companies have an opportunity to be trendsetters, and
Mhm.
large firms have the opportunity to see how nimble and agile smaller companies can be. Do you ever, like, when you're drawing inspiration, or you're looking at your historical record of knowledge within your organization, where do you draw inspiration from? What do you look at to help these large firms make these really great strong decisions?
Often I think it follows on what you just said. Start small.
Yeah.
Try something new. Have a test case, and then don't be afraid to expand it. The hard part for large organizations that are looking at change is that it's like moving a tanker, right?
Right.
They can be so entrenched and so decentralized that it almost feels overwhelming. But then you make the use case, and you develop, a small group that operates with more entrepreneurial spirit, or more white space and creativity, and then you build the use case, and you spread from there. So, what gives me inspiration in our business really comes from both our clients and our consultants that are creatively problem solving, and they're not afraid to try new things, um, and then apply the mindset which says, okay, if that failed, what did we learn from it? And what are we going to try next?
So in that type of circumstance, I like the word intrapreneur. Like, I'm kind of an
Mhm.
entrepreneur because I'm doing something new, but I'm still within the framework of a larger organization. Is that kind of like the type of setup you're talking about, where you have, like, okay, we're going to do something for a year, and now let's see if that thing is successful and see if it can be rolled out within the larger organization. Do you, like, frame it like that?
Well, I haven't used that word, but I love it. So I think if with your permission, I'm going to steal that as we go forward, because it's exactly that. And there's certain silver linings that came out of the global pandemic, but one of them in many organizations is that freedom to try something new, even in a large organization, to really look in your own functional area or group. What is some white space where I have permission to be more creative? In many organizations, failure is very political, and it can be very damaging to innovation. And COVID, in some respects, gave people kind of a pass because the world was going to be difficult no matter what. So bring some creativity and see if you can make it better. And in that regard, we saw a lot of like design thinking workshops in organizations that would never have done design thinking in the past. And that's pretty cool. And then creating like tribe atmospheres to problem solve together in ways that wouldn't have happened without, the disruption that we've had over the past 18 months.
It's a leveling playfield, right? Like, no one's alive who has experience running a business during a pandemic. Like, that doesn't exist. You
That's
know, like, to your point about failure, like, I didn't realize this when I started the business, but I've realized this over time and getting to know how we work, and why I like doing what I'm doing, is that I've never been so comfortable to fail. I've always, like, when I've worked for other places, I've always felt uncomfortable that, like, I can't mess this up because this is someone else's money, or this is someone else's reputation or organization. And the permission for me to fail and the permission for my team to fail. Sure, it's not great when it happens, but I will tell you, there are some cases where it is 100% okay to fail, and that's okay. And that's totally okay. And then there are other situations where it's like, okay, I don't want you to fail, but if you do, it's also okay. It just hurts a little more.
right.
But the ability to just, like, not look at failure as a sword in the chest is there's so much weight lifted off of that.
I think that's absolutely true. And it's not the end of the road. I mean, failure is really the beginning of the next part of your journey. And
Absolutely.
COVID taught us that. And I think it gave people courage and frankly, a little cover during this time to maybe step out of their comfort zone and really try it.
Kate, as we wrap up here, how can people find you and RGP?
So www.rgp.com, super simple. We're a human-centered organization. Our brand is built onto the power of human. And so we're really excited about the opportunities ahead, and empowering people to live their best lives, both personally and professionally.
Awesome. Kate Duchene, CEO, RGP. Thanks for being with us today.
Thanks so much, Robert.